Okay, so now it's time to look at some of the structures that are involved in male reproduction, and we will be looking both at the internal and external reproductive organs, and then a little bit about sexual function as well. So let us begin. So as we think about the male reproductive tract, the beginning of the reproductive tract is associated with the testis. And so we've already talked about the seminiferous tubules where the spermatozoa are being produced. So the next place that the sperm wind up is in what are referred to as the epididymis, if it's singular. If plural, the term is epididymides. And this is a very coiled up tube. And so, wow, 20 feet long. When you think about how coiled up the the lumen of the epididymides are. So, as the sperm leave the seminiferous tubules, they're functionally immature. And one of the reasons that they are immature is because they are, at this point, incapable of any kind of coordinated locomotion, and they are not able to fertilize the egg. They don't have, we'll see that there's some work that has to be done before the acrosome is prepared to be able to digest its way toward the waiting oocyte. So the role of the epididymis is to secrete the nutrients required and the chemicals that help direct the maturation of the sperm. And they also, slowly but surely work the sperm toward the exit from the epididymis by peristaltic contractions. And so by the time the sperm reach the end of the epididymis, then they are functionally mature, but they are still not capable of motility. So they cannot yet swim. Next location that the sperm wind up are in the Ductus deferens, and in plural form of that is Ductus deferentia, and also referred to as the vas deferens, or sometimes the vasa deferentia if we're talking about plural. So lots of terms that can be used to describe or to name these structures. This is the tube that is cut when a vasectomy is performed. So that's the process of rendering, that's the surgical procedure that will render a man infertile, unable to fertilize the eggs. So the ductus deferens transports the sperm, and it does it by peristaltic contractions, from the epididymis up through the abdominal wall, there at the inguinal canal, and then passes it off to the urethra. And this all is happening during an ejaculation. So after sufficient sexual stimulation and ejaculation, then that's when the sperm leave the epididymis, and their pathway that they travel is the ductus deferens, or the vas deferens. If you are looking in the book, the drawing that you want to be looking at is the one on page, here we are. It's the one on page 825. And notice that the ductus deferens makes its way up across, on the anterior side of the superior side of the urinary bladder, comes around, circles back around the back side of the urinary bladder, and it joins with the duct that takes secretions from the seminal vesicle toward the urethra as well. And so where they join together, that's referred to, and before they join into the urethra, that's referred to as the ejaculatory duct. And so the ejaculatory duct passes through the prostate and joins up with the urethra in the center of the prostate. So we've got two ejaculatory ducts, two ductus deferens, but only a single urethra. And so both of the ejaculatory ducts are going to connect into the urethra there at the prostate gland. And then the final structure that the sperm pass through during ejaculation would be the urethra itself. And this is the tube that carries urine from the urinary bladder to the outside of the body, and it also carries, during ejaculation, semen. So the good news here is that as sexual excitation occurs, what we see is inhibition of the urinary bladder and of the valves, the external urethral sphincter and the internal urethral sphincter. We see inhibition of all of these muscles, so that the only thing that passes from the male urethra during an ejaculation is semen, the fluids, the reproductive fluids. We don't have any urine that gets mixed into the semen. Okay. So let's talk now about some of the accessory organs that are associated with the male reproductive tract. Only about 5% of semen, of the fluids that are ejaculated when a man reaches orgasm, only about 5% of those fluids are the secretions coming from the epididymis that carry the spermatozoa. The other 95% are produced by the three accessory organs of the male reproductive tract. And the first is, as we look at them along the pathway toward the exterior of the body, the first of these glands is the seminal vesicle. And it's a sac-like gland, approximately 5 centimeters long, something like 2.5 inches, give or take. And it produces about 60% of semen. And in the secretions of the seminal vesicle, we find fructose, which is there to provide energy for sperm, because remember, they're not carrying along with them any energy source. There are also hormone-like proteins and other chemicals called prostaglandins that have the function of stimulating contraction of the smooth muscles of both the male and the female tracts, and that helps to move the sperm along. So as the male and female reproductive tracts do these contractions, that thanks to the prostaglandins, then we see the sperm being funneled along a little more easily. And the secretions of the seminal vesicle are slightly alkaline, and this helps to moderate the pH of semen, because the sperm have produced a fair bit of metabolic acids. They have, as they're doing their respiration while they're there in the epididymis, they they cause the fluids in the epididymis to become slightly acidic, and so this alkalinity in the seminal vesicle secretions helps to buffer that, to neutralize that acid. The second organ along the pathway is the prostate gland. And be careful, don't put an R in there and make it prostrate. It's the prostate gland. The prostate is about the size of a walnut, is what most people say, something like 4 centimeters by 3 centimeters. It's roughly spherical. It surrounds the urethra there at the base of the urinary bladder, and it's responsible for 20 to 30% of semen. The secretions of the prostate gland are thin and kind of milky. Also has an alkaline pH, and these secretions, the alkalinity of both the prostate and seminal vesicles, the alkalinity of their secretions also helps to neutralize the acidity of vaginal secretions too. And it's with mixing of the spermatozoa with the secretions of the prostate gland that we finally see the sperm gaining the ability to swim. So this really turns on their ability to begin waving the flagella that is attached to them. The bulbourethral glands, these are the third in the sequence, and but they are the first of the male accessory glands to produce a secretion, and they produce a lubricating mucus that helps to make that helps to ease the friction of the penis as it is entering the vagina, and as the man is engaging in sexual intercourse. So single ejaculation produces anywhere between 2 and 5 milliliters of fluid, and in those 2 to 5 milliliters of fluid, we see approximately 120 million, give or take, a couple of million, sperm cells per milliliter. So let's say we're talking about 5 milliliters of secretion. That would be something roughly like 600 million sperm in a single ejaculation. If we see numbers as low as 48 million sperm per milliliters, then that's what we start talking about as a man as being borderline infertile. So even though those numbers, 48 million, sound like a heck of a lot of sperm cells, in the scheme of things, it's the sperm have got a lot of work to do, and so many are called, but few are chosen. Is the way their process works. The fluids that are found in the semen cause motility of the sperm, and they also help to neutralize the acidicness of any secretions that are in the female reproductive tract, or thanks to the activity of the sperm. And last of all, as the sperm are encountering the fluids of semen and entering the female reproductive tract, that membrane across the acrosome that separates the acrosome from the external environment, that membrane becomes weaker, and that will then make it easier for those enzymes to leak out. And we talk about that process of the weakening of that membrane as capacitation. And so the sperm at this point now have the capacity to fertilize the oocyte. Okay, so male external reproductive organs. Here we're talking about the scrotum, which is the skin and muscle sac that encloses and protects the testes. It's lined with a serous membrane, and so the testes inside the scrotum are able to move around smoothly without abrasion, thanks to the serous fluids and the very slippery nature of the serous lining that is there at the parietal layer of the serous membrane. In the subcutaneous of the skin of the scrotum, there are many, many smooth muscle fibers, and we refer to this collection of smooth muscle fibers as the dartos muscle, and its job is to regulate the temperature that the testes have. And it turns out that sperm, as we have mentioned before, need to be at a slightly cooler temperature than body temperature in order for the sperm to develop properly and for the testes to remain viable. And so it is the dartos muscle that either contracts, drawing the testes closer to the body and warming them up, or relaxes if everything is nice and warm, and in fact too warm, then the dartos muscle will relax, and the testes are allowed to hang further from the body wall. Alright, so there's the scrotum with the testes inside. There's the penis, which is the erectile organ of the male reproductive system, and it surrounds the distal length of the urethra. So the urethra runs down along the entire length of the penis. Three portions to the penis. There's the body, which is the shaft or the tubular portion of the penis, and it contains within it 3 columns of erectile tissue. There are 2 corpora cavernosa, so that's the corpus cavernosum when we talk about just one of them. So we got the corpus cavernosum, and there's 2 of those, so they are the corpora cavernosa. And then there's the single corpus spongiosum that actually directly surrounds the urethra. And these 2 layers or these 2 types or tissue names, they are the 3 columns. That's what I'm trying to say. Sorry about that. These 3 columns are the erectile tissue of the penis. And what erectile tissue is elastic connective tissue with a maze of blood vessels found in it. And as sexual stimulation occurs, then we get involuntary stimulation from the brain that causes the arteries, the veins that enlarges, that's what I'm looking for. They enlarge the size of, so we see venodilation, arterial dilation. Let me start again. In response to sexual stimulation, the arteries that bring blood to the penis will dilate. And as they dilate, more blood comes in, and as more blood comes in, then it constricts the veins that drain blood from the penis. And so this creates then a traffic jam of blood, or a backlog of blood, so that the penis becomes engorged. And it's this erectile tissue that this is all occurring in. So distal to the body of the penis is the glans, sometimes referred to as the glans penis, those 2 words put together. So it's somewhat enlarged distal portion of the penis, and at the tip of the glans is the external urethral opening. The glans is sometimes thought of or referred to as the head of the penis. So it is the part that penetrates vaginal tissue first. And then last of all is the prepuce, sometimes referred to, or probably most often referred to, as the foreskin. And this is a fold of skin that drapes to cover and surround the glands in many young boys. So shortly after birth, they will the parents will have the doctor perform a circumcision, which cuts away this fold of skin surrounding the glands. Not everybody, circumcises their sons, but many people here in the United States, especially, still do perform circumcisions. All right, so let's talk about sexual function now. Erection occurs as parasympathetic stimulation relaxes or dilates the arterial walls by relaxing those smooth muscles and the smooth muscle cells there in the arterial walls. And this allows blood to flow right into that maze of erectile tissue that are in the corpora cavernosa and the corpus spongiosum. So that compresses the veins that would drain the blood away from the penis, and so that traps the blood into these erectile tissues, producing the male erection. And after continued sexual stimulation, a man will finally reach a set of contractions that are associated with orgasm, and it provides sort of a physiological release and a psychological release. Orgasm does, and it is generally accompanied by emission, so the release of the spermatozoa from the epididymis, and ejaculation, which would be the passage of semen from the male reproductive tract, usually to be passed over to the female, where she can fertilize her eggs. So, as emission occurs, this is when contractions of the accessory glands and the epididymides move the sperm and all those glandular secretions into the urethra, and then ejaculation occurs as there are very rhythmic contractions from the skeletal muscle that is found at the base of the penis, right there at the body wall, right around the perineum, that space, especially around at the perineum, the space that is in between the penis and scrotum and the anus. So the sequence of emission and ejaculation: first, we see bulbourethral gland secretion, and that helps to lubricate the penis during intercourse. And then the prostate gland produces its fluid. The epididymides then release sperm into the vas deferens, and that sperm is then passed through the ejaculatory duct to the urethra. And then finally, as the sperm are passing through the body wall, then semen is also passed out, the secretions of the seminal vesicles are passed out with the ejaculate. So these three are the primary secretions during ejaculation. This frequently comes prior to ejaculation. And then finally, as sex is, as the couple is relaxing after sex, the male enters what's referred to as the refractory period. So this is the time immediately following ejaculation. At this point, there is no longer need for the penis to be turgid, and so the arteries supplying that erectile tissue, they begin to constrict. That allows the flow out of the penis through the veins to pick up, and in response, the penis becomes sort of flaccid. The refractory period is usually somewhere between 10 to 30 minutes, and during the refractory period, then the male cannot ejaculate again, or usually cannot get an erection and then ejaculation. So you have to take a little breather before another chance to have sex can occur. Okay, so there it is. We've looked at all of the organs in the pathway that sperm take as they leave the testis through the epididymis, on into the vas deferens, then to the ejaculatory duct, where the seminal vesicles are also producing secretions, and then into the urethra, passing through the prostate, where the prostate gland puts its secretions into ejaculate, and then finally, as the semen is passing alongside the bulbourethral glands, then we'll see that secretion added into the urethra, and then finally the semen, the resulting fluid from all of these secretions, will be produced and ejaculated from the penis. Alright, so if you have questions, don't hesitate to contact me by email or give me a call at work. Thank you very much.